Okay, so they're saying that the second thing that people fear about most after death is speaking in front of an audience. So fortunately enough, the room is not full. I don't want to repeat anything that was said. Just before we start talking about Israel as a knowledge-based society, I think one should, lay the foundation for the discussion. And when I speak about the Israeli higher education system, so I want to speak about the base from which I'm coming from. So right now, I think roughly putting there are two schools of thoughts in the academic world about the higher education system. So you have the more conservative approach, talking about the academia as a small elite that creates research that doesn't necessarily has to do with society's biggest problem. And you have the more progressive or more activist, I think, approach that is talking about, the academia and the higher education system as a dominant part of the society and society's challenges, economical challenges, etc. A system that requires to face, the society's largest and biggest challenges. So when we're speaking about, when I speak about the Israeli higher education, this is a normative base from which I am coming from, and I think it's very important to say it, because right now we feel that there is no vision or no one set the goal for the higher education system in Israel, and I think this is one of the biggest problems that we are facing. There's all kinds of incremental changes going on. We have the BDC, and then we have some other things that are going on, but it just not a part of a big, vision that the entire ship is going to. And I think that this is a problem. I would like to thank the BDC for inviting us, the newest, to speak here. I think it shows how, the Bologna process, the BDC perceives the students and the cooperation with the students and the student role within the academic sphere. So, thank you. So I'm going to talk about three issues that we thought are appropriate to speak about when talking about a knowledge-based society. The first one is transparency. The second one is accessibility. And the third one is the inclusion of different actors in the higher education decision-making sphere. And of course, when I say actors, I mean students, because I'm here to speak about the students' perspective. So, okay, transparency. We talk about Israel as a knowledge-based society. But how can we even start talking about a knowledge-based society and the higher education system within this kind of process? We're not speaking about transparency. So the the higher education institutions in Israel are lacking transparency. I don't know who noticed it, but they are lacking transparency. And it's, it's a few elements of a few, layers of transparency. The first one, we're talking about a public system, mainly public system. The taxpayers' money is invested in these institutions, and that's why people should know what's going on inside these institutions. We don't know about the budgeting issues. We don't know how it works. Everything is behind the scene, very closed box, black box that no one can see and no one can refer to. So the Hebrew University in Jerusalem has in this financial crisis for many, many years, and we don't know exactly what is going on there. The students are time and again are required, put more money inside the system. But so okay, let's say that, you know, this is the right thing to do. But what kind of a system are we putting our money into? What's going on there? How are these funds are being managed? We don't know it because it's not transparent to us. Okay, so we feel that we can't talk about a knowledge-based society when the system is not transparent. The other side of this transparency is, you know, for example, we have the British model, which is very progressive. You have the Unistat. People can go online and check up courses in the universities and see, you know, which university is the best in, you know, economics or social science, and, you know, people can choose, can see what are the alumni are doing, what are they working on, how much money do they earn. And this is important for us, the students. We want to know this stuff. But we have to have this information, and the institutions are required to give it. You know, it should be out there. And this is something that we at NUIS are trying to promote for many, many years, also with the Ministry of Finance and also with, you know, Malag, but it's not happening because the institutions are very, very close. You know, don't keep. I know this Professor Newman talked about competition for the sake of competition, and we don't want to do that. We want a competition, a good, healthy competition between the institutions, and we want, when students are applying for the university, we want them to know what they are applying to, because many students are telling us that they don't know what they are getting into. They don't know how they will end up. So this is about transparency. Okay. So my second point is accessibility. You know, I was just in a study tour in America, and I was at awe. You know, I was walking in Chicago, and suddenly I went into a building, and it was a building of the University of Chicago. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. This is not a closed surface. You know, everyone can just walk into the university. It is part of the city. It is part of, you know, that's how they call it in Chicago. They're trying to brand themselves as a startup city as well. So the ecosystem, the city's ecosystem. So it's huge to see how, you know, the university is part of the community on which she's standing on. So accessibility, we're not just talking about, you know, the amount of students that will come into the higher education world. You know, it's not the absolute number. It's about who are those people. You know, let's say you can make an argument, you know, we have over, I think, 300,000 students in Israel today. Many will say, you know what, that's enough. You know, we've reached to the maximum level of students in Israel, and it's enough. But who are these students? Are there enough Arab students, Haredi students, Ethiopian students? The answer is no, there aren't enough. Okay, this is something that we as a society and the higher education system must, you know, work on. It must lead it. You know, higher education should export its knowledge and also import the community inside. You know, and then you have the case for a closed elite circle who focuses mainly on research, doesn't have to do with employability, the market force. So if the academia wishes to stay this way, so we have to come up with some other solutions. And I'm talking about community colleges, and I'm talking about vocational education, et cetera, But solutions are needed, and things cannot stay this way. If we're talking about an ecosystem, so universities in Israel are not part of the city's ecosystem. Let's just take for an example, Tel Aviv, the startup cities, the startup companies. Where was Tel Aviv University within this process? I don't know. I mean, maybe there were some students that is later startups, and it's okay, and this is part of the university's, job to export these students, but not enough. It wasn't good enough. It wasn't involved enough. Also, the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. There are some really amazing processes going on in Jerusalem, and the university is not part of it. And it's a shame, because there is so much knowledge in this building, in this closed and high building, somewhere, but the university, it remains there. It remains there, and that is a problem for us, the students. Well, I am a student in the university. Okay, so for the third point, I'll try to keep it short. The third point is the inclusion of other actors. And by other actors, we mainly speak about the students in the decision-making sphere in the higher education world. Fernando talked about, you could see how there were so much engagement with the students, and also the Bologna process puts the students in the middle, students as partners. We feel that today there is a certain, it's not just a problem with the higher education. I think it mainly is, but not only, of a certain elite that, suddenly see that things are changing, and it wants to keep things as they were, they were used to be. But we can't afford ourselves to be this way, and I totally identified with what Professor Newman said about the academic freedom. We feel that the academic freedom, in a lot of cases, is creating stagnation instead of, putting yourself out there and exploring. So I think people will be very surprised to see what a responsible approach students can have when the entire picture is laying beneath their legs. I mean, when they see the entire picture. There's a perception of students who just wants to, cancel the tuition fee, and, this is the only thing that we want. Not true. We also want to see Israel's universities as the top-notch universities in the world. We know that this this affects our future. The more, we want to keep the quality of the studies, of the research. And we can also bring different perspective, and a very important perspective. Unfortunately, there aren't people here from the Malag and the Vatat. I think it's very important for them to be in such a place, talking about these very important issues and values that the Bologna process represents. I can even tell you that a personal thing, that my boyfriend is the head of the chairman of the student body in Ben-Gurion, and he completely agrees with Professor Newman's, approach about the Vatat model, for example. So we have responsible students who wants to make the system better, and we want to be included in the decision-making sphere, the budgeting, the academic issues, everything. We want it to be a transparent system, and we want to see how the system is accessible, how it can export its knowledge and import the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Inbal. It was very interesting. I think it was a great example of how the students can bring new ideas and new thoughts to the the sphere of higher education in participation of students. And now it's your time for questions, and maybe we'll start from the other side. Anyone? No? Because before they had a question.
Thank you. Sorry that I'm asking every lecturer, but that's what I have. I propose you sometimes to visit Google, because most of the questions you've asked, they're written there. You should know that the university where you do your second degree is 59 in the world. It's the 6th one in the non-English speaking world. It has, for example, every Sunday it has a special lecture open for the public. But all that happens not in your campus, in Givat Ram. Simply the problem is that maybe you don't know. I very agree with the fact that we are not perfect. My criticism of the university is much deeper than yours, but at least you should start knowing the facts.
Yeah, I didn't say anything about the fact that there are not aren't lectures.
Can I respond to that, please? And can I just finish, please? I would just like to take issue with what you've just said. You've just heard a student ask you for the co-production of knowledge. Knowledge is not only about experience. And if I ever heard one of my lecturers say, go and look on Google, I would discipline them, because actually it's the last thing you should be doing in a university. So I'm sorry, I take issue with what you've just said to the student. I also take issue with the fact that actually this is about co-production of knowledge, and that's the point. And the point, I think, in the Israeli system is that academics don't want to know that.
And I would also add that, if me as a student in the university don't know about the lectures that are going on in Givat Ram, so that is a problem, I agree. And, think about the larger public. I don't think that, can't even imagine this concept of open lectures.
I'm going to take the very rare opportunity I have of sitting in the audience and asking this to you. Because once every semester, once every year, what we do in our faculty is I have an open conversation with the representatives of the student representatives of every department, and I say, come and tell me everything that's on your mind. And it's a PR exercise, I admit, but I mean, it's important because we get important feedback, there's no question about it. And every year I come and say, but you know what, there are certain questions I know you're going to come up with. Why do these departments always have seminars that coincide with each other? And why do different lecturers mark grades differently? We know there are certain issues, which I'm not in any way diminishing, which are issues which come up every year. Students are new to the system. I have the advantage of having been there for 20 years. So, I have an advance over you before you even start speaking. But I always say in advance to people who organise these meetings, come and tell me what the big issues are, what the really big issues are. Come on, let's have a real conversation. And I never get them in the sense that you put them here today. And so what we, rightly or wrongly, I'm not making any value judgment, go back and say, we go back together and say, oh, once again there was a problem of courses and how many hours they have to study and why is this fair and why is this unfair. Why don't they come up with the big issues? Perhaps they're not interested in them. So I'm asking, why don't these big issues come up? Why aren't they part of it? Is it because, as you say, that we're behind the world here in Israel in this particular context, or are there other reasons?
Well, first, I would be the first one to admit that also students could be sometimes obnoxious, and we can complain about things that we can just keep quiet about. Okay, but the way that the student association in Israel works, that within the institutions and the representatives of the faculties, they talk about specific issues that has to do with exams, seminars, etc. The National Union of Israeli Students has has the time and more resources to invest in the macro level issues. And we do that, and we are, to say, let's say, the voice when we talk about the macro level issues. And so we kind of leave the micro level issues to the representatives of the different faculties. So that's why they're complaining about, you know, the small stuff. And we try to promote macro level policy in the Malag, in the Vatat, with the Ministry of Education, with other actors in this field. But I would agree that they should also bring that up.
Well, thank you, Inbal, for the presentation. I just wanted to congratulate you. It's not always easy, indeed. And I want to put something into the discussion as well. I'm coming from Spain. Student representation in Spain is also not the strongest one. It's also not very well perceived. It's not like in UK. It's not like in Norway, etc. It's actually quite a paternalistic approach. And I always try to explain this to my professors and to the rectors' conference in Spain. What do you do if you want to do a student to be, for example, employable and have and being able to speak in English? You teach them English, right? Why, if we want to have students that will be active in democratic societies and active citizens, why we don't teach them or enhance them with proper skills to be active citizens? We are not neither teaching them or like helping them to learn, neither giving them the resources to do that. So I would like not all over Europe that the universities are actually taking seriously this part or this purpose of education and are actually helping the students to become active citizens, and that also includes helping them to be active student representatives and having the resources within the universities and within the institutions to do that.
I would like also to say something. It's not a question, but a remark regarding the part of transparency you mentioned before. I agree with you. The greatest problems I see, well, we have many problems. This is one of them. And I wanted to just mention and let our audience know that one of our partners in Germany, the Center for Higher Center of Council, they just launched a project called U-Multibank, and they have a very nice website, and I really recommend you to go into it. And it's a very nice way to give students information about higher education and about universities and colleges. And it's open for more universities and more colleges to participate in. And it's very, very interesting, even just looking on the method and how they built it, and it's very easy to use. So that's just a remark of how it can be made.
I would also say that NUIS it is very important to us to be as transparent as we can as an organization. So you can find all of our protocols, all of our contacts online. We want to set an example for the other students, the local students association, and we think that the higher education institutions should be the lighthouse of transparency in the public institution sphere.
Let me tell you a bit about transparency at Hebrew University. I was involved for 2.5 years in a project by the Israel Comptroller, מבקר המדינה, looking at how management or administrations of universities here in Israel treated sexual harassment within their own campuses. And a whole chapter was published about the Hebrew University in the Comptroller report of May 2013. When I asked whether this chapter was discussed by the board, they never heard of it. They never heard of it. I asked members of the board, you know, what is your reaction to this chapter? A whole chapter about the Hebrew University mistreatment or mismanagement of sexual harassment. They said, what report? What report? Until this day, most of them do not know about this report. Those members from abroad, you know, should have, or the Hebrew University should have translated this report for them. They never heard of it. So this is how transparent the university
I should
is.
also add, in terms of the sexual harassment in campuses, that this is one of the subjects that we're working on. It's very unfortunate, but it happens. So we wanted to get information from the universities about, you know, the cases of sexual harassment within their campuses, and they won't give it to us. You know, IDF reports every year to the Committee for the Women Equality Committee in the Knesset about the amounts of sexual harassment in the IDF that year. The higher education institutions in Israel refuses to do it. This is crazy.
It's an infringement of academic freedom.
No, but it's not funny. This is what
part of the problem.
This is what they're saying. They're saying this is, it hurts the academic freedom. That is the answer that we got when we wanted to get the information about sexual harassment.
We have a man in the UK that did a lot of charity work with Jimmy Savile. It comes under the same... And Rolf Harris and a lot of others, but we've just seen possibly the worst sense of the BBC do precisely that, which is to hide the information. Actually, it wasn't the comment I was going to make. It was about how we look at citizenship and train for citizenship, and some of David's comments. I think one of the things that I notice here, and I notice in the Esprit project, for instance, is that there is academic work that students do, and then there is community work. Community work isn't given the same level of recognition as, so, you know, you do it, but you do it on the side. It's not something that's seen as part of learning to be a citizen. And that needs practical experience, it needs, some people call it vocation and skills experience, but that is as much part of credit as academic or intellectual work. It isn't that your body is here to carry your head around, and we forget that. It's a really straightforward thing to say, and I do think that there is something embedded in the culture here that is very different when you go across Europe, not just in the UK, but in other countries. And I think Spain has some of that same discussion when you have those conversations.
Has the UK been ready to community work?
I am doing a workshop actually tomorrow at Betzavel to show you 15 projects in which credit is given, and the big question is what is assessed. And one of the big things about that is it's not necessarily product, it may be about process. And those are some really big questions, but they're very difficult questions until you have a framework in which to manage them.
I would remark, you know, we are not in the 90s. We don't have 70, 80,000 students in Israel. We have more than 300,000 students. The higher education system in Israel cannot afford itself to be anything else but approaching society, having some connection with the market force, with questions of employability. It has to be there. Active citizenship, it is all part of it, and it's part of the academia role in society. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to